everyone. We are the Group 3 and welcome to Marxism and Critical Theory. So first, let's talk about what is Marxism. So Marxism is social, political, and economic theory originated by Karl Marx, which focuses on the struggles between capitalists and the working class. Marx wrote that the power relationships between capitalists and the working class. So Marxism is a way of understanding society that focuses on the idea of class struggle. It was developed by again Karl Marx, which is a philosopher and economist in the 19th century. When we say class struggle, Marx believed that society is divided into classes based on who controls the means of production, like factories and land. There are two main classes, which is the bourgeoisie, which is the rich capitalists who own the means of production, and we have here the proletariat, which is the working class who sell their labor. Marx argued that these classes are in constant conflict because the bourgeoisie exploit the proletariat to make profits. Next slide. Marxism attempts to reveal the ways in which our socio-economic system is ultimate source of our experiences. Marxism looks at how our socio-economic system, the way society and the economy are organized, profoundly shapes our experiences. When we say socio-economic system, this includes how wealth, power, and resources are distributed in society. It refers to the laws, customs, and practices that govern how we produce, distribute, and consume goods and services. When we say ultimate source of our experiences, Marxism suggests that our experiences are not just random or individual, but are deeply rooted in the socio-economic system. This system shapes our opportunities, limitations, and interactions. Next slide, let me call on Mamaylin Mandin.
Okay, good day everyone. So in continuation of Blessing Marie Olana's discussion, my part here is about Karl Marx. Okay, so who is Karl Marx? Karl Marx was a highly influential philosopher, social theorist, and economist, famous for his critiques of capitalism and his theories on communism. His ideas form the basis of Marxism. Karl Marx's work primarily focused on theories regarding capitalism and communism. And one of Marx's central ideas is historical materialism, which posits that the economic structure of society, which is the mode of production, is the real foundation upon which the legal and political superstructure stands. It argues that history is driven by class struggle. Marx theorized that capitalist society is fundamentally divided into two main classes. These two main classes was the bourgeoisie, which is the owners of the means of production, and the proletariat, which is the wage of laborers. He argued that conflict between these classes was inevitable and would lead to a communist revolution. So Marx's ideas have had a profound and lasting impact on world history, influencing numerous political movements, labor unions, and governments throughout the 20th and 21st century. So the legacy of Karl Marx, while his theories have been interpreted and implemented in various ways, often with controversial results, his analysis of economic inequality, labor relations, and the dynamics of capitalism remains a significant subject of the study in academia today. So for the next slide, we have here the terms Marxist theory and economics. The first one we have here, the bourgeoisie. This term used by Karl Marx refers to the social class that owns the means of production, such as factories and land. In a capitalist society, This class holds significant economic and political power. So, an ideology, a system of beliefs and ideals, especially one that forms the basis of political or economic theory. So, in a Marxist content, ideology often refers to the dominant belief system of the ruling class, which serves to justify and maintain their power. So, the next one is the proletariat. This is the term Marx used for the working class individuals who sell their labor power to the bourgeoisie in exchange for wages because they do not own the means of production themselves. So for the capitalism, an economic system characterized by private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. So the capitalism have three parts. The first one is the wage labor, which means workers are employed for wages. The second one is private property, which means individuals or corporations own assets. And the next one and the last one is the market economy. The production of goods and services is regulated by supply and demand in a market. And that's all. And the next reporter will be Miss Generos Pajo.
Okay, thank you, Miss Mandin. And now, I'll be discussing the Marxism and modern literature. Like Freudian theory, Marxist theory's influence on modern art and literature can be first broken down by its influence of writers and the works they produce, and on readers and the way critics use Marxist theory to interpret the works. So, Marxist theory, much like Freudian theory, has left a significant mark on modern art and literature by focusing on how economic and social class struggles manifest in creative works. Writers often drew upon Marxist ideas to explore conflicts between the wealthy and the working class within their narratives, highlighting how economic systems can generate inequality and hardship for specific groups. So, for instance, a novel might illustrate the plight of laborers exploited by a prosperous factory owner. Readers can then employ Marxist theory to comprehend how power dynamics and social class influence characters and plot developments, prompting them to question and the values and beliefs that perpetuate social inequality. So, literary critics in turn utilize Marxist theory to analyze the representation of social class in both books and art. So, uncovering hidden biases and ideologies within their analysis. In essence, Marxist theory offers a framework for examining how art and literature grapple with issues of class, power, and economic justice. So the example for this is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. So in this series depicts a society divided into districts where the wealthy capital exploits the resources and labor of the poorer districts. So the protagonist, Katniss Everdeen, becomes a symbol of rebellion against this oppressive system. So it is highlighting themes of class struggle and resistance. Okay, so now let's proceed to the next slide. The Chimney Sweeper is the title of two poems by William Blake, which is published in Songs of Innocence in 1789 and Songs of Experience in 1792. So the background of this poem is the dark side of a prominent child labor in 18th and 19th century in England. So most of the children work as chimney sweepers. So they were oppressed by the master became they should clean the chimney that has a small size and they paid low. So this poem is Blake's commentary of the child's labor issues, and the use of imagery is to portray the brutality of the Industrial Revolution, one of the crucial period in history. So, William Blake's The Chimney Sweeper consists of two poems published in his Songs of Innocence. So, these poems delve into the grim reality of child labor during the 18th and 19th centuries in England, where many children were forced to work as chimney sweeps. These young workers were often exploited by their masters and enduring harsh conditions as they climbed narrow chimneys for meager pay. So Blake's poems serve as a commentary on the widespread issues of child labor, using vivid imagery to depict the brutality of the Industrial Revolution. Through his verse, Blake sheds light on the suffering and injustice faced by these children, highlighting the dark underbelly of this crucial period in history. So the poems expose the vulnerability and exploitation of children in a rapidly industrializing society. So they also critique the social norms and economic forces that allow such practices to persist. The chimney sweeper acts as a powerful indictment of child labor and the dehumanizing effects of the Industrial Revolution.
Thank you, Miss Paho. For the next slide, Miss Steve explained who was the proletariat and the bourgeoisie.
Chimney Sweeper from Songs of Innocence. Blake used the children who work as chimney sweepers to establish working class or the proletariat. Using a child's voice, Blake intended to create a unique perspective of the world because according to Western legal tradition, children are not supposed to voice their interests. Unlike adults, children tend to address a matter differently, especially with their innocence. The message will appear more sympathetic.
William Blake's The Chimney Sweeper uses children working as chimney cleaners to represent the working class. Blake chose to use a child's voice to offer a different view of the world. Back then, children weren't really allowed to speak up for themselves like adults could. Because kids are innocent, their message comes as more heartfelt and touching. So, for the next slide, to gain sympathy from readers, Blake voiced out his concern towards children exploitation issue using a child's voice who talks about the misery the children's experience. And my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, whip, 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 which is line 223. In the line 4, Blake used possessive pronoun, which is your, to include the readers to the poem. To make readers feel sympathy, William Blake expressed his concern about children being exploited by the using the voice of a child who describes the suffering they experience. One example is the line, "And my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, whip, 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 whip." Additionally, Blake used the word your to include the readers in the poem. And that would be all. For the next slide, let me call on Miss Nunez.
Good morning, everyone. Let's talk about what is critical theory. So, critical theory, Marxist-inspired movement in social and political philosophy originally associated with the work of the Frankfurt School. Drawing particularly on the thought of Karl Marx and Sigmund Freud, critical theorists maintain that a primary goal of philosophy is to understand and to help overcome the social structures through which people are dominated and oppressed. So what is critical theory? So the critical theory is a school of thought rooted in Marxist principles emerging from the Frankfurt School, heavily influenced by Karl Marx and Sigmund Freud. It possesses that philosophy's central aim is to critically examine and dismantle the social structures that perpetuate dominance and oppression. This involves understanding how the structures function and actively working to overcome them, thereby fostering a more equitable and just society. So that is a critical theory.
And now let's talk about the persons under the critical theory.
So next slide is about Antonio Gramsci. So Antonio Gramsci, born in January 22, 1891 in Italy, most important Marxist of 20th century. He is known for his concept of cultural hegemony, maintaining the state of capitalist country. He was clear that transformation from capitalism to socialism required mass. So, who is Antonio Gramsci? So, Antonio Gramsci, born in Italy in 1891, was a Marxist thinker. His most famous ideas is cultural hegemony, which explains how the ruling class maintains power. So for example of this, if most people believe that hard work always leads to success, they might blame themselves for not succeeding rather than questioning the system. So Gramsci argued that to achieve socialism, it's not enough to just change the economic system. You also need to challenge and change the dominant culture so people can see through the existing power structures. So that is all about Antonio Gramsci, and that's all about for my part. And the next slide to continue the discussion, I would like to call Miss Monalyn.
Good day, everyone. I am the last reporter, so let's move on to my part. Jürgen Habermas, born outside Düsseldorf in 1929, Habermas came of age in post-war Germany. Habermas embraced the critical theory of the Frankfurt School. Habermas' primary contribution to philosophy is his development of a theory of rationality. So, Jürgen Habermas, born in 1929, is a renowned German philosopher and social theorist known for his work in critical theory and his theory of communicative and rationality. His early life in post-war Germany shaped his intellectual path. Habermas was associated with the Frankfurt School, expanding Marxist thought to critique social and cultural domination. His theory of communicative rationality emphasized communication for mutual understanding and consensus. He is also known for his concept of public sphere, promoting open exchange among citizens. While influenced by Marxism, Habermas' critical theory broadens critique to all forms of domination. His work on communicative rationality and the public sphere has significantly impacted social and political thought. So the last slide is the conclusion. So in conclusion, Marxism provides a materialist analysis and critique of capitalism, focusing on inherent class conflict and economic exploitation, while critical theory broadens this critique to encompass all forms of social and cultural domination, moving beyond a purely economic focus to advocate for general social emancipation. So, Marxism critiques capitalism through a materialist lens, focusing on class conflict and economic exploitation. Critical theory expands this to include all forms of social and cultural domination, aiming for broader social emancipation by addressing power dynamics beyond economics. So that would be all to our part. As we end our topic, the Marxism and critical theory, if you have some question or clarifications, just comment your thoughts or question below to the comment section. Thank you, everyone.
A pleasant day to everyone. And now let's talk about real world example. First, we have here income inequality, analyzing wealth disparity and the exploitations of labor. When we say wealth disparity, this is the difference in assets like property, stocks, and savings held by different individual or group. And also exploitations of labor. When we say exploitations of labor, this occurs when workers are not fairly compensated for their efforts. No, for example, gender pay gap, where women earn less than men for the same works. That's for the example of income inequality. And also we have here media bias. It is the tendency of media outlet to present information in a way that favors in a particular viewpoint. So kumbaga, naay gipanigan. For instance, a news channel consistently promoting a specific political party's policies. That for media biased. And then we have here environmental justice. When we say environmental justice, fair treatments and meaningful involvements of all people, regardless of race, color, national origins, or income. No? And then that's for environmental justice. And then we have here cultural critic. When we say cultural critic, it is the method of inquiry that questions and challenge dominant cultural norms, values, and power structures. We have here analyzing how cultural product like music, movies, arts, and many more. Then analyzing social inequalities. Now, when we say analyzing social inequalities, cultural critics seeks to reveal how these products can perpetuate stereotypes and justify discriminations. That for cultural critics. And that will be all in my part. Thank you.